everyone, and welcome to the School Board Candidate Forum. We're going to do this in two parts, and our first part is the candidates running for a one-year term. We're going to open it up so that candidates can tell you a little bit about themselves. They're going to get about 2 minutes to do that. And Colleen, we are going to start with you.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Colleen BRYER. I've lived in Derry my whole life, gone to the schools. I have 3 children here in the schools. I'm a pre-K teacher, and I've recently gotten more involved with the school board, realizing how important it is, all the different issues, and I'm really thankful for the time that the board puts in. And I do have a little bit of anxiety talking in front of people, but it hasn't stopped me from coming down to the meetings and having my voice heard and speaking for the little people in our town. So I think that's all about it.
That's it?
I guess.
All right, Michael?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Michael Leon. My wife Eric and I have lived in Derry for just over 15 years. I grew up in California, but I've lived in New Hampshire now 26 years. I don't know where it's gone. It's been an amazing time. How did I get to the school board? I have always been someone who's been very interested in education. Starting in high school, I had independent study opportunities, and it was definitively my teachers who pushed me when I needed to be pushed, encouraged me when I needed to be encouraged, and sometimes had much sterner words when I needed to hear much sterner words. In essence, some of my best teachers were mentors. I left high school, I went to Alaska for 2 years. There was not a whole lot of science up there, and that's kind of one of the things that's really driven me. I returned to California and completed an undergraduate degree where I was able to teach, expand my teaching curriculum, including at the collegiate level. Organic chemistry, which some people say is hard. I'm actually teaching it to 2 kids right now, my own sons who are 6 and 8. It's, I think, one of the biggest challenges in teaching. We've heard so many times in Derry, you go to the booth, and the one thing that's for sure is the budget always goes up on the school board, which is okay. We know that money needs to be spent for education. It's an investment. It seems that's always the cure, though. And if you teach a broad range of students, whatever it is, I've coached Special Olympics, certainly a different teaching than teaching the Dartmouth biathlon team how to shoot guns, black scary guns. Understanding who the students are that you're working with a lot of times can help you uncover things. And I want to be able to be an active member of the school board, not to make changes. We've all heard changes need to happen. I think what needs to happen first, this is a one-year term, is to lift the hood of a car. Like you're taking this whole district to the mechanic and saying, are we totally tuned up, or can we do something better? I think asking some of the right questions can certainly be very telling. If we need to ask for more money, we need to ask for more money, but that's probably not the first thing we need to do. I'm hoping we don't think of students as children. Maybe they are when they come into school, certainly when they leave. Hopefully the product is not children that they're graduating. So there's lots of questions to ask, and I look forward to this discussion tonight. Thank you.
And Jonathan?
Good evening, and thank you to the VFW, Tina Guilford, and Richard Tripp for putting this together, as well as Derry TV for broadcasting this forward. This really is a great opportunity for all of our messages as candidates to share that for the school board candidacy that we're going through. My name is Jonathan DUGAN, and I'm hoping tonight that you'll see that I'm ready to be your next school board member. Before I get into why I think I'm the best candidate for this position, I'd like to start with a little background about me. I was born and raised in Derry, attending Derry Village, Hood, and Pinkerton, before getting my bachelor's degree attending University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Soon after college, my wife and I moved back to New Hampshire, and when we finally had enough money to save up for our first home, the decision to move back to Derry couldn't have been any easier. I know how great the town can be. I've seen it at Derry After Dark, I've seen it at the farmers markets, and I've seen it most especially in our school system. Since I've returned to Derry, I've sought out opportunities to be involved in this community. I've coached in the Derry Hawks program, attended many events in Derry, and have also served on the Fiscal Advisory Committee for 3 years. I know that there are so many tough decisions to be made during budgeting season, and I'm certainly ready to make them. Since I decided to run, I've tried being more involved on the school side of things, reaching out and meeting with town councilors, SAU administration, past and present school board members, state legislators, teachers, parents, and others in the community. What I've heard from this group of people is that they'd all like to continue the improvements that our school system is making. These improvements have to include a long-term plan for our facilities, as there is so much work that is needed on our buildings. We can also strive for improvements from a curriculum standpoint as well. And as a community, we can all benefit by being involved. Whether that is supporting your local restaurants, volunteering your time and talents, donating, etc. When communities engage together, everyone benefits. Finally, I want to thank everyone tonight for attending, tuning in, and submitting questions. Thank you so much for being here.
All right, we've had a request from some of the people watching on Facebook. They say some of you sound really muffled with the mask up. So you guys all are at 6 feet, so if you feel comfortable and you want to pull the mask down, at least when you're speaking, it might be better for the people at home to hear you. When this airs later on Derry TV, they're getting a live feed to the microphone, so that won't be as much of an issue.
Is this better?
I certainly hope so. All right, and David, you're next.
Good evening. My name is David CLAPP, and I want to take a moment to thank the VFW, Richard, Tina, the other candidates for participating, and the residents of Derry who are going to participate in this forum tonight. A little bit about myself. I'm a father of 2 wonderful children. Sean, who's 11, he's a 6th grader at the Hood Middle School. Haley, who is 7, who is a 1st grader at the BRYER Elementary School. Both my kids have unique needs. My son is on an IEP plan, and my daughter has type 1 diabetes. We moved to Derry in 2018 from northern Massachusetts, where we struggled with our school system, particularly with my son Sean's IEP plan. Ever since we came to Derry, we've had a great experience at the BRYER Elementary School. With regards to my son Sean, his IEP plan has gone smoothly, and the staff, the nurse, everybody at the BRYER manages my daughter's type 1 diabetes on a daily basis and does a great job. So my wife and I started to get involved last summer, attending school board meetings, kind of wanted to get the lay of the land on how things run in Derry, and obviously it was a forum for us to advocate for our kids. When this opportunity presented itself, it was a perfect time for me to get off the sidelines and truly make a difference on a larger scale. I truly believe my skill sets would add value to the school board. I have an undergraduate degree and graduate degree from UMass Lowell in accounting and finance. I work for one of the largest long-term care providers as the Vice President of Finance in Massachusetts. I have over 20 years experience in accounting, finance, P&L management, budgeting, and cash flow management. A few of the items I would like to get involved in and pay particularly close attention this 1 year that I would have if elected is keeping our kids in school full-time and safely. I want to ensure that children with special education services continue to get the service they need and deserve so they thrive. And finally, I want to explore ways that Derry can improve and fund our schools without increasing our already high tax burden. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and welcome all candidates. As a first-time candidate myself last year, and as a current school moderator candidate, I do know how hard it is to put your name on a ballot and step up, and as for that, I thank all of you, because we do need everybody in town to step up. I'd like to issue a huge thank you to DerryCAM, who is filming this and will be airing it, putting it on online, be available, so watch their Facebook page. I'm certain they'll post something there for us. You can probably then share that if they're not watching the Facebook Live that's going on right now on my page. I'd also like to thank the Veterans of Foreign Wars for hosting this forum. And as such, we always give them the first question. And the first question is going to go to all of you. It's going to start with Michael, and then we're going to go around to Jonathan, David, Colleen. And the first question is, Governor Sununu has ordered the schools to reopen. Do you support this, and why?
take off my mask so you can hear me. I'm 100% in favor of reopening the schools. I think one thing that COVID over the last year has taught us, one, basic concepts in science are still, we're doing terrible. If you look at actual academic performance, we're doing terrible. Right now, there's a lot of people that are scared by this disease, really scared. I work in biomedical research. I actually have, full disclosure, participating, not myself, but helping run 2 clinical studies investigating drugs to treat COVID-19. It's a real disease. If you look at the actual statistics, children have incredibly low likelihood of having negative outcomes with this. Has it happened? Absolutely. If you watch the news, it's a lot more fun to watch a house burn down. It happens in a few minutes than to watch a house be built, which can take a year. I think there's a lot of paranoia. If we are data-driven, 100%, we should be figuring out how to get kids back in the classroom with a big asterisk. For some parents, for some students, study from home. I don't know what the official term is. We call it work from home now when we can. But study from home works for some. It doesn't work for others. Maybe this is another choice that we can actually offer within the district that may even exist beyond the current pandemic that we're in. So opening the schools and getting back to education that works best for students, 100% in favor of it. Thank you.
So yes, I agree with Governor Sununu with reopening schools. I think it's very important for the children, the students to get back into school because the social and emotional well-being of these kids has taken a huge toll over the last 12 months. Now, to echo some of Michael's thoughts as well, does that mean it's for everybody? Absolutely not. I think having an option open for the remainder of this year for those families that do or are fearful for sending their kids back into school because maybe them or someone else in their family is immunocompromised, I think that's great to have that alternative remote plan that we have in place as well. I think Marianne and I think Austin have done a great job with the remote learning plans that we've had. Is there improvements that we can see? Yeah, absolutely. I know just in my own perspective, I have a 7th grader at West Running Brook. We have one child. Both my wife and I work from home, and we worked from home prior to the pandemic, and we'll work from home continuing after as well. And so it was relatively easy for us to make that transition to a remote plan. For many families, whether it's a single parent or multi-kids in the family, those kids are going to benefit from being in school and need that. And those parents need the ability to send those kids to school as well. And so it's very important that we get the kids back to school. I would love to see teachers be vaccinated. I would love for us to put them up as far as we possibly can on that list to get them vaccinated so that we can continue to protect our teachers because those are the ones that we're sending in every day, sending in to teach our kids every day. And so we should be doing as much as we certainly can to make sure that they're at the top of that list. So yeah, absolutely, kids being in school is very important. We've seen the depression rates increase. Again, is that an option for everybody? No. So having that additional remote learning plan is beneficial. So, yeah.
So I agree getting kids back to school. I agree with the governor's news order to have kids go back to school. And as Michael and Jonathan articulated, from a social and emotional perspective, it's really important to get back to school. And I see it with my own children, particularly my son, who stays in his room, not much interaction. You can see, I saw a difference. You saw a change in his demeanor. Since we've been back to school for hybrid, it's definitely, you can see the change, and you can see him feeling much better. And then hopefully when he goes back to school March 15th, there'll be a real change and back to normal for him as best it can be in this environment. And it's tough, and like John said, my wife is able to stay home as well, but she has a job where she's a social worker in the state of Massachusetts, where she's constantly on phone calls dealing with kids who really need help and that are in real danger. So it's tough for her to try to manage 2 kids on remote schooling and do her job and be effective at it. So there's always that challenge, and we do the best we can. I try to work remote as well. And I suspect a lot of parents have those same issues in just different situations. But I will say, I think we need to have an option that we have. Either you want to stay remote or you want to go into school. I think we need that option definitely through the end of the school year. And Michael said maybe it's something we want to look at for the long term. So just to end here, I would agree to send the kids back to school. Thank you.
I also agree that it's a good idea to send the kids to school. I'm seeing the struggles in our own district and the district that I teach in as well, whether it's children of average development or special needs children. It's definitely a challenge. The mental health is probably even more of a concern than academic, because everybody's going to be making up some of the academic stuff, at least on the same playing field. But it's very worrisome. I know I read about a young boy in Amherst and in other towns that, the parents don't even see a warning, and then, they unfortunately end their lives, and we don't want to see that kind of thing in our town. I do agree, the teachers should be able to get their vaccines sooner than later. And I think the remote option we should probably look at being able to keep remote teachers instead of the synchronized learning, because I don't think synchronized learning is helping. It's very distracting for the children, whether they're at home and hearing the kids in the classroom, or if they are in the classroom and the teacher's trying to teach the students over the computer at the same time. And I know a little bit about that because I do have, I have some remote preschoolers actually, but they only Zoom in for short periods a few times a week. And then I do individual lessons. So it's not as challenging as a teacher trying to teach two groups of students, some at home and some in class at the same time. That's all, I guess.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would like to come up and ask a question? Anyone? Okay. So, Jonathan, you'll start with the next question. Have you been following the facilities and enrollment over the past 5 to 10 years? What insight can you bring to the table regarding this? And also your opinion on closing a school and or redistricting.
All right, I just want to write it down, make sure I got everything. As I said in my introduction, I've been involved on the Fiscal Advisory Committee for 3 years since I moved back here. And part of that process is discussing the facilities and seeing the enrollment. So some of the notes that I know I've written down is over the last 10 years, we've averaged a triple-digit decrease in enrollment year over year. And so that is obviously, as a school district that has a $90 million plus budget, it is something that we have been monitoring. It's something that we, as a Fiscal Advisory Committee and the school board went through and did. They actually put together a number that said, hey, once we hit this number, then we need to enact and plan. Obviously, at the most recent school board meeting, there was a discussion about using a project manager and hiring them to do a study and give us a plan. That would have cost, I think, $60,000 to $90,000 just to start that process and find that out. So I don't necessarily think that was the best route to go, and I'm glad the school board did not decide to go with that project manager. I think it's something that we have all of this data at our fingertips. We've heard from many people in the town. We're seeing the enrollments decline. It is a time to make a decision. I also understand that we cannot bind future boards to do things. So again, this is only going to be a 1-year position. My goal is to put together a long-term plan as a roadmap. This is not going to be anything that says we have to do this in 5 years or this board in 3 years has to do X, Y, and Z. It is just that, a blueprint or a roadmap. So if we accomplish 3 things on that roadmap in the first year, great. When we come back the next year, we look at step 4 and we say, at this particular moment in time, is this the right thing that we should be doing? If it is, great, we'll move on. But it's not something that we have to bind future boards. So I think it's really important that we can still put together a plan that does allow us to be flexible and very agile so that we can make the right decisions when we get there. As far as closing a school or redistricting, I think the time is now to figure that out. I know we've talked about closing the SAU. The fact is that that's costing us $20,000 a year. So I'm not sure if moving those people out and putting them into the classrooms right now is something that is a wise idea with the limited classroom sizes that we have. Is that something we decide to do in the fall? I think that's a decision that we have to make over this summer.
Matt's time.
Can I just repeat the question?
It's the same question.
So, like John said at the school board meeting that I attended as well, it sounds like this has been a problem that's been kicked down the road a couple of years now. It sounds like this is something they've been discussing since 2018. And from the deliberative and the flyer pamphlet that was passed out, it sounds like we have some real decisions to make over the next 4 to 5 years when it comes to facilities. If I'm not mistaken, it's about a $4 million target that we have to hit to replace roofs and whatnot. And it sounds like 2 of those roofs are schools that have been discussed in the closure plans in the past. I think at this point we really need to have a clear understanding on how we're going to pay for that and how we move forward. And it sounds like we don't have a plan. I think one of the first things, it sounds like the board, when they met, they were discussing a plan to move forward with that, and hopefully we can get something. And whoever gets elected from this group will be, pushed right into the middle of that discussion and need to get up to speed on what we need to do moving forward. So, with regards to closing of schools, I will say I'm not as familiar as maybe Jonathan is on this situation, but it's something that I will definitely look into and get to understand, and as we move forward, become educated on this process and planning moving forward. Thank you.
So, I was around and paying attention when this topic started coming up. And I read through the facilities report, and I know people worked really hard on it. And I definitely can see the issues. It just wasn't ready at that time. There was a lot of what ifs in their plan. And of course, I am a big fan of neighborhood schools. So when that was all going down, I was really adamant about not closing either of those schools. But through more research and more education on the matters, I do see that eventually they need to do something. And we're still dumping money into them, and not really having a plan at all isn't going to work, because we're just going to keep doing the same thing year after year. And the tuition just keeps going up for the other schools. Pinkerton to be one, but I know we spent $720,000 when it was paving, and it says sewers. We noticed the paving right away this summer, and we wondered about that money. So that kind of money, plus all the HVAC and the roofs, something needs to be figured out. I definitely didn't want to spend the money for the project manager. I think just like he said, mapping it out and making a plan for numbers. They definitely are saying that it's going to continue to decline, the enrollment. I do see some people moving to the neighborhood. We had 3 new families. Their kids are older though. Either they come from Massachusetts and they don't have kids, or they're older. But I definitely don't want to spend 30 or 40 million on one giant school either, if that's part of the plan. I think either figuring out how to keep the schools and repair them, or if that makes sense. But if the numbers are the way they are and continue to decline, you got to do something. But I think you could do maybe 2 smaller schools at a better price. That's all, I guess.
Awesome. So I'm listening to this, and I'm reminded by our state constitution that we need to cherish education. I think we all do. Certainly the people who come here tonight, this is Education is something that we do over our life. Getting to the question, facilities, they're merely a tool of this, but are they, it's almost like we're talking about them like a liability right now than an asset. They're a great place where students come to learn. It's a place where people gather to learn. These should be revered. Enrollment has absolutely been going down. It's one of the things my wife and I have talked about. It's kind of frustrating to see that. If you look at Pinkerton, there's people that travel from other towns to get to Pinkerton. We have a huge asset there. The contract for Pinkerton's up for negotiation this year as well. That's another thing someone on the school board, or the whole school board, is going to have to deal with. As far as facilities, to close them, that's one choice to have. Has anybody looked at alternatives? Can we as a school board look at alternatives to closing it? It's not part of Derry School District, and maybe I'm a pariah for mentioning it, but there's a charter school here in town. And some students that have graduated from there have gone on to do really well and have successful careers. Rather than just getting rid of the school, are there other options for other educational opportunities within Derry? I would not be in favor of saying let's just close the school. I'm certainly a fiscal conservative. I can tell you when I work with researchers and they come up with brilliant ideas that we're already doing or it's not going to move forward, rather than saying, no, what else do you have? And I think for an asset like a school, if you look at one of the school board unions actually has a whole thing on cherishing the facilities. Does it have to stay within the school district? Maybe, but I'd be willing to look at different options to keep it as an educational opportunity for students in Derry. And redistricting, everything can be on the table to look at. I'm not necessarily in favor of that. I think Derry's been one of the best communities in the entire state of New Hampshire. So do we need to redistrict? I don't know if that's a pressing concern. Thank you.
I answered
Did you answer this question? First. Just making sure. All right. So, David, you get the next question. The school board needs to become more fiscally responsible with our tax dollars. Are you willing to negotiate fiscally responsible contracts with the unions so they will pay more towards their medical and dental insurance and pensions, similar to coverage that an average Derry taxpayer has to pay?
So I would agree. We do need, as Michael said, he's a fiscal conservative. I am as well. I think we need to explore all options in the budget. We need to look at every line item and see where we're at and see what options we have and dig in. I think the contract is up next year, so I think this will be an opportunity to review these particular areas. And would I be in favor? Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of looking at it. It's something that we need to look at and figure out if it makes sense. I think right now the splits are 80-20 and 90-10 for what the district pays and what the individual pays. So, in the private sector, I think we're a little bit higher than that on the employee side paying. So, yes, I think we need to take a look at that and figure out if that's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, I was looking for my pie chart because it really stands out on that. For some reason, I can't find it right now. I must have lost my paper. But absolutely, I think it would need to be looked at. Comparing different companies and rates is always good too. I'm not completely familiar with exactly how much they pay in on their own. But I did see that between the benefits and salaries, that's a huge portion of our budget. It's basically those two things, and Pinkerton is like the whole pie chart. So it definitely would need to be looked at. But, we do need to take care of our teachers at the same time. Specifically, if you come in to work in special ed as an aide or assistant, they don't get paid enough at all. So taking away from them isn't necessarily the only option either.
Very good.
So this is definitely a big question. Since my wife and I have lived here 15 years, every deliberative session we've gone to, you get like the old Sears catalogs, and I apologize for the younger listeners. I can't even say phone book anymore. A very thick catalog, like a mail catalog that you get that's almost all finances. It's so confusing. Buried in there are hidden gems. This time, the school board deserves congratulations. They actually put some academic performance in there, and I certainly laud that. Teachers, how the question was asked, and this to me is really interesting. Do I answer what I think as a teacher, or do I ask how a teacher is defined at the state level? Is that a guidance counselor? Is that a principal? Are they in the classroom teaching, or is it the teachers? I certainly don't want to cut teachers' pay, not at all. But I think this all comes down to where do you direct money? My mother-in-law is a public school teacher. I certainly cherish that. I've literally taught from high school through graduate level across a breadth of topics. I think teaching is incredibly, incredibly important. I'm a student today. We have other things we can look at. Can we be more supportive of teachers, not just with pay? We happen to have benefits that not only are better than most of the rest of the state, we have benefits for our teachers that far exceed what are available throughout the country. That's something to be proud of, not to hide from, but we need to take that into account when we're looking at the total remuneration package for them. It was mentioned the Pinkerton contract is coming up this year. That's something we can look at as well. However we boil it down, we are paying a lot per student. We have those resources pulling in. How we actually spend them, we need to be careful with. So, if somebody's coming, let me say, if somebody comes to Michael Ann and says, I want to raise the budget by X dollars, my first question is going to be, what are we getting for that? Thank you.
So on the topic of school board being fiscally responsible and negotiating teachers' contracts, I think that there's a lot of other ways in which we can either lower the budget or increase revenues, because those are the two kind of levers that we can pull, right? So if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's that the state had agreed initially to give aid to the towns and essentially to the teachers for their benefits or for their early retirement, and a lot of that aid has gone away. And so I think that, again, some of the things I talked about in my introduction of reaching out and being involved in the community, working with town councilors, talking to state legislators, trying to get state reps involved, I think we need to be making sure that the people we're sending to Concord are bringing revenues back into Derry. I think that's a hugely important thing. And then we can treat our teachers the way that they need to be treated, and we can pay them the way that they need to be paid, and we can provide them the benefits that they deserve, because we are the ones that are entrusting them to teach the future of Derry, that our future, our children's future. I think something else that I think was negotiated in the past cycle or not also is that the teachers have been asked to pay more back into their benefits and be more responsible for that. So that process has already started. So how much is it going to be until it's too much to ask for the teachers to give back? We're already asking them to teach our children. We're already asking them to wear many different hats, whether that is a grief counselor, dealing with socioeconomic differences, being there for the children. I think it's important that we continue to invest in our teachers, and I think it's important to make sure that people that are looking for teacher jobs want to come to Derry, and we need to attract that, because the best way that we're going to improve the education for our children is having the best people educate them and having the best educators. Another option that I think could potentially be on the table, I'd have to see how it all plays out, would be talking to the administration and the rest of the school board members and talking about maybe an early retirement incentive, because that is one of the biggest ways in which we can really lower the cost that we see on that pie chart for teaching and salaries and benefits. Is we can take someone that's off the top step and they're making the most money, and we can attract maybe a second, a third, or fourth year teacher we can bring them in at a much lower step. And what people may not realize is that is a lower salary slot versus a 20, 25, 30, 35 year teacher. So there's many different ways in which we can continually reduce the budget or increase the revenues.
All right, Colleen, Next question starts with you. It also references a photo that I have printed out and left on your table. It has been made clear by many parents that they desire their children to be in school full-time and that remote and even hybrid are not working for them or their children. Recently, this photo went out that is the layout for an 8th grade classroom at West Running Brook as of March 15th. The distancing will be 3 feet from center of desks, meaning only inches between actual desks. Is this acceptable to you? If we desire to get kids back in the classroom, are we doing so at all costs? And if not, how can we remedy this?
Okay, so this picture actually happens to be my son's class, and when I saw it, at first I was like, what am I looking at? But then I looked closer, and it is every other, so like it looks really close together, I think, but it's actually spaced.
So just for clarity, from what I was told in the question, and the history of the photo, because they said that was going to be a subject, those markings are for hybrid, and every seat will be filled as of the 15th.
Yeah, see, I heard that too, but then I wasn't sure if that was accurate, because also, I don't know.
I was just letting you know what I was told in the question.
Yeah, so it doesn't exactly look like 3 feet from, it's the center to the center of the desks. Yeah, at first it definitely looks, okay, so if they're going to be like that, it is awfully close. However, they're facing forward, and they're really not going to be interacting much with each other, especially given that they're going to continue to work on their Chromebooks because they're doing synchronized learning. So, I mean, I don't know. The benefits and the risks, you know, you have to kind of weigh them out. If that's the best they can do, I would still send my son. He needs to go to school.
I'm trying not to laugh. If these are 3 feet apart, would we be better off if they were like 3 feet 6 inches? In the last year, with COVID being serious, there are over 40,000 publications dealing with COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2, which is the no longer novel coronavirus that causes COVID-19. There are close to 1,000 studies looking at lower elementary through high school level education settings. They are one of the lowest areas where we expect or have observed, have published transmission of the causal agent of COVID-19. The only problem I see with this picture is these seats are empty. Where are the students? It's the only problem I have with this. Put the students back in the classroom. If you want to keep your students home, I'm entirely in favor of that. If that's what works best for you, that's great. For the students that want to go in, for the parents that aren't afraid, that want their students to go in and have that face-to-face interaction with their teachers, I'm sad seeing empty seats.
I struggle with this one. My wife and I decided to keep our daughter at home in the fall, and we had a very good long conversation with our daughter, and we had the alternative remote learning plan, and we were really happy that she had a dedicated teacher. It needed its improvements, and we were certainly disappointed to see it go. And then the transition back to hybrid, we've seen our daughter just be much happier. She's getting to see people, she's getting to see her friends. And so, yeah, this isn't ideal. It's the minimum requirements that we have. But again, I think we have a great set of teachers and a great set of administration. And I think things like universal masking, this is a great example of that being something that works. The teachers are diligently telling their students, put your mask down. They're constantly telling them to wash your hands before you go before you go eat, or right before you eat. So again, it's really just a great thing that our teachers are doing. So yeah, for those that aren't comfortable, it's not a perfect situation. It's not a perfect solution for you. And I think we all feel for each other. And I think, again, as a community, we need to make sure that we're uplifting each other, or we're supporting each other in any ways that we can, and not try to beat down on each other. Again, this is one classroom. Are there others that have similar distancing? Yeah, absolutely. But the vast majority of the students in the classrooms are going to be spaced at appropriate distances. And they're going to have teachers that are looking out for them to make sure that their masks are on. And again, there's younger kids, it's going to be harder to do. But these teachers have proven that they are able and they're willing to do it. When they're showing up, they're keeping our kids safe. There's been little to no little to no school spread, and also in Derry we've had very little spread. The cases are coming down. There's vaccines becoming more and more available. And even though there are concerns, again, 75-80% of the population want to go back to full time. We need to make sure that we're supporting that and still giving that other 15, 20, 25% an opportunity to continue their education.
So I feel at the end of the day, choice is important. And in this scenario that we're running up against starting March 1st, you have a choice. You can go back to school full time, or you can stay home and do the remote learning. And as Jonathan said, this isn't an ideal situation, but at the end of the day, it's not the norm in our schools. This is, from what I understand. And just my own personal experiences with my son and my daughter, they're really excited about going back to school. They want to be there. It's a whole different ballgame, and we want them to be there. As I mentioned earlier, the social aspect, the emotional aspect, we need the kids back in school. And even when we started this process back in last August or July, or whatever, we started talking about going back to school, there's never going to be a perfect solution. There's always going to be an issue, or there's always going to be some sort of issue that someone will bring up. It's not perfect, but in my opinion, the good outweighs the bad by sending our kids back to school. And what I'm comfortable with is people have a choice. That's the most important part. We're not forcing anybody to go back to school. We're giving people choices, and that's the most important piece of this. And as everyone's mentioned, the transmission rates are lower. There's been documentation of very little transmission between children. So I think at this point, it's not ideal, but at the end of the day, the good outweighs the bad, and we really need to get our kids back to school. Thank you.
Can I add one thing? Am I allowed to do that? Real quick. I just wanted to say, so although when you're thinking about it and looking at it, that it's close together with the kids and everything, comparatively, when you're talking about people in the community who work outside of the home, most of us have to work in close vicinities with other people, just as close as these pictures, and also within the community. I know Market Basket, for one, you can't get away from people there. They have the aisles are one way, but when you're going in there at a busy time, you're weaving in and out of people, and sometimes they're coughing, they have their masks, but you're like behind them, or you're squeezing by, like in the community and at everybody's jobs, we're working closely with other people, or we're in their bubble. So to freak out about it and think that, school's the only place you can get COVID is not really.
All right.
That's it.
And then
That's
we're going to stop. Go ahead.
What I'll say is, when we went back to school in August through November, I thought it was pretty successful. I don't remember a lot of issues. I don't remember there being a huge problem, and that's a credit to the district and what they've done to prepare for this. So I have every confidence that starting March 1st will be in a similar situation than we were last year.
All right.
I'm going to point out one thing quickly. There is humor in this.
And this is why Tina didn't want to do a Zoom.
If you look at the picture in the window, there's a fan there. Anybody who's read the CDC guidelines? Sorry.
All right.
That's,
Do you want to add a little something too?
All set.
Maybe it's exhausting, though.
All right.
I think it might be.
Next question, I start with Michael. The town council is required to operate under a tax cap in Derry. As a school board member, are you willing to support putting a binding question on the ballot requiring the school board to do the same? Why or why not?
So this is actually a great question. Yes, I am absolutely in favor of predictable raises. I think this forces a couple things. The school board should be modeling behaviors that every parent can be proud of. Somebody brought up socially economic challenged families, that no two people are equal. If you go to a family that you don't think has as much money as you do, and you say every time the solution is more money, how does that work out for them? Can they actually meet that? I think you place unfair expectations on them. What this is going to do for the school board, if there's a rate increase cap put on there, we're going to have to come up with things like a rainy day fund and actually fund it. We're going to have to plan for facilities management, not this year and next year, but as Jonathan brought up, we're going to have to look at into the future. We're going to have to look at many years into the future. Derry is absolutely changing. To have a tax cap, it'd be nice for a tax cap, the spending cap put in place, this makes the spending increases predictable. When things are predictable, it's much, much easier to adapt and to plan for future needs, which we may or may not see today. So I would be in favor of that. I want to touch on one other point and just add state versus local funding. This is a ticking time bomb. If we think that bringing money back from the state to Derry, rather than, if we need to raise the rates in Derry, I am happy to look at Derry taxpayers and say, I support raising the rates. If we, on the other hand, go to the state and say, bring us money, that means we're giving the state more control over our schools. That is not something I will ever support. I will vehemently defend the role of the school board in New Hampshire to be a local institution. Thank you.
No, I would not put this on the ballot. We had this question on the ballot, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago, and it did not pass. The taxpayers spoke 2 years ago. I believe if it was put back on the ballot again, I think it's something that it would be tough to pass. That being said, the school board does essentially have, it's not a rainy day fund, they're able to keep 2.5%, and they've actually put it on the ballot this year to keep 5% of the total budget as essentially a rainy day fund. It came in handy certainly this past year. We also got some additional funds back from the state that we put back towards the tax rate as well as continue to keep money in the bank. I think it is financially responsible to continually make sure that you do have some money in your savings or that rainy day fund. I think practicing good budgeting is putting away money and saving that as well. So that way, when we do have large capital expenditures like $400,000 on roofs that need to be put on so that the kids and the teachers are safe and that they can go through a day without having a bucket in the classroom or a leak spring, then I think it is important to have that money available for them. Also, again, if we're putting a tax cap on, there are federally mandated programs that we have to provide for. So again, when the cost of those rise, and we have great programs like the NACC partner programs, ISLE, DEEP, we have these great programs that actually reduce the tax burden by not sending the kids that need those services out of district. Out of district placement is so expensive, and it takes the kids and their families out of Derry. We need to keep the kids in Derry. We need to find innovative ways that maybe we can find neighboring towns such as Hampstead or Chester or Wyndham or Salem that maybe they can come and utilize our programs as well. Again, it's all of us in southern New Hampshire working together, all of us in the community working together. So no, I'm not in favor of putting a tax cap on there. I just don't think that there's just too many flaws in that. And then there's just too many programs that need to be advocated for. So it's not something I'm in favor for.
I agree with Jonathan. I'm not in favor of this tax cap either. I think you need to have the flexibility to do what you need to do in the school budget. The important piece is elect the right people to the school board to make those decisions and work with the administration to keep the budget in line and we may keep that flexibility in-house and not have to be artificially told that this is where you need to be. And as Jonathan mentioned, there's a lot of important programs that we fund, particularly the special ed programs that, you know, we want to keep those whole and we want to keep those moving forward. There's a lot of people that utilize those programs. So I think the important piece is elect the right people to the board so you don't need to handcuff them when it comes to the school budget. Thank you.
I agree with Michael on this. I think that having that cap would force some creativity, innovation, and responsibility within the district. And like he said about the different families with how much they can pay, you know, we want young families to move to Derry and stay in Derry. But it's really hard when the tax bill just keeps increasing and increasing. And like you said earlier too, without seeing what are we actually getting for that money. You know, our schools are good. I think they could be better. And I think figuring out a way to do that without just taxing. My own father, he's on a fixed income. His taxes went up 22% on his home this year. Obviously, only a certain portion of that is from the school budget. But, you know, it ate his whole COVID relief money. So, and I'm sure it did that to a lot of the young families. So I think trying to figure out how to keep it affordable for young families to move here and stay here is important.
I just want to give the option one more time. Is there anyone in the public that wants to ask a question? Anyone?
I have a comment.
Come on up.
Talking about the taxes in Derry, we bought a house in 2016 and our taxes was $3,200. And last year it was $5,200. And there's a certain point where we won't be able to afford the taxes in this town anymore and we'll have to sell and move to Londonderry or somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people are doing that because the tax rate is too high. So I just wanted to let you know.
Did any of the candidates want to respond to that? You want to respond to that?
Yeah, I can go first. So yeah, I definitely understand. That's a huge increase. I mean, I think a lot of us in Derry have certainly felt that pain. We've seen either the taxes stay the same and then the valuations on our house go up, or taxes go down and then valuations go up even more, or the valuation might stay the same and then the tax rate goes up. So it's definitely not ideal, right? I just don't think a tax cap is the way in which we can do that. I think there are a lot of other ways in which we can keep our budget in line, because I don't think the reason the budget is high is because we're overspending. I think, again, being on the Fiscal Advisory Committee, sitting through 3 years of the budget process, going line by line, and presentation after presentation, and I would be hard-pressed to believe that anybody sitting in here watching this would have made many of the different decisions that we would have made, because the programs that we have, the things that we provide for these kids. 2 years ago, we were asked to remove athletics, to extracurriculars. Like, we're talking about the mental well-being and the emotional needs of these children. Those things are important. And yeah, it's expensive. But again, working with town councilors, working with our state reps, working with our state senators, again, going to Concord and finding out ways in which we can bring revenues back to the school district is one way. Again, I'm all for looking at different ways in which we can negotiate teacher contracts. I'm all for looking at the bus contracts and how we can be more innovative with that and reduce the spend there. I am all for that type of stuff. I think if you want to look at different ways, or a crazy idea that might bring immediate revenue, look at what Keno has done for Derry. We are now providing full-day kindergarten. So if we can have legislators that are going, and we look at the surrounding states, they have taxes on marijuana, and they have taxes on gambling. And again, yes, we have virtual gambling, but how many people are going to casinos? And again, yes, not offering that might be a moral thing, but It's not changing anything today. People are still going to Maine, to Vermont, to Massachusetts to get these vices. We have a great distribution network already. We have a state liquor distribution network. Why don't we utilize that so that we can bring more revenues back to not only Derry, but to the rest of the state as well? Because all this money is being filtered out to our surrounding states. So again, I understand the pain. I'm a taxpayer, all of us up here as well, and our taxes are going up. And there's nothing more that I would like to see than have that go down. But again, I think there's just a lot of different ways in which we can meet that need.
David?
Yeah. So I feel your pain as well. I bought a house in 2018. I think, as Jonathan mentioned, the valuation went up about $40,000 this past year, so we saw the increase hit this most recent tax bill. So I can relate to what you're saying. But I think we still need to leave the flexibility at the school board level and let them work through the budget process. As Colleen mentioned, I think our budget is 50% of its salaries, and I think another 30-something% is the Pinkerton tuition. So there's there's a lot of fixed costs there. But I think if you elect the right people to the school board that can help make those tough decisions and we can keep the budget in line as best as possible. I just don't want to see programs like Jonathan mentioned get slashed or anything like that, particularly the special needs programs, which my family utilizes and a lot of families in Derry utilize. I think the important piece, I think the piece that is what we need to do is elect people that will commit to keeping the budget, making tough decisions, and really combing through it and see what we can do, rather than putting a cap on it. And like Jonathan said, we have Erica Leon as an education committee member. This will be working with her to bring money back to Derry is key. So I think at the end of the day, I still feel like we shouldn't have that cap.
Colleen, did you have something you wanted to say to that?
No.
No? Okay. Michael?
All right, so actually on the topic of the town council, this is something I think the school board absolutely needs to address. As unrelated as it seems, marijuana was brought up. I was in a town council meeting. One of the reasons I stopped going to Derry town council meetings, the Derry town council voted to teach children that marijuana and heroin are the same drug. I dropped the F-bomb in the town council meeting. I think it's probably still on video there when I addressed the town council. Not directed at any of them. I was beyond angry. I have a PhD in pharmacology. Marijuana and heroin are not the same drug. What else is the town council voting to impact the Derry school district? It is the exclusive job of the Derry school board to determine the curriculum in our schools. I'm not worried about the town council as a threat. We need to understand if they're going to approve grants, which can come in from the state, more often from the federal government, what are we getting? What are actually being taught to our children? What's being asked for them? I was shocked. Marijuana and heroin are so not the same drug. If this is being taught in schools, if I were a parent and I heard my kids were taught that, I would be very angry. Most kids who have tried marijuana at a young age have had the worst experience of running out of Ben & Jerry's. And they're smart. They listen to what they're told, what they're taught. If they're taught that marijuana and heroin are the same drug, I can tell you what they're going to do next. It's something I'm torn over that. As a school board, one of the most important things we can do is do what we've spent very little time on tonight so far, and that's talk about academics. Schools are a place of learning, and they're supposed to be a place of learning. Yes, you have to spend money. Yes, we want to bring in the best teachers. We want to attract the best talent here. We want to have creative solutions. We should be focusing on what we're going to do academically for these kids, whether they go on to pursue something in college or encourage them for the students that absolutely don't need college. I'm going back to school right now to learn forestry. There are jobs upon jobs out there that don't require college educations. What are we doing beyond the spending part? I can come to a taxpayer. I'm very sensitive to this. My wife and I are hoping that we die in our house here. I want to live here as long as I can. My dad's 92. It's probably not going to be anytime soon. Sorry for anybody that was hoping that was soon. I want to be able to stay here. Our tax rates are going up. 60 cents out of every dollar goes to the schools. We should be looking at that as an investment. What are we getting back? we're talking about spending. Yes, it's necessary to spend money, but shouldn't the school board be focused also on academics? At least that's one thing I'm hoping that whoever gets on the board.
And that's time.
Thank you.
Did you have a question? Yep.
Michael. I'm a town councilor.
You were there?
I might have been sleeping or counting tiles on the ceiling, but I don't remember us saying we should have marijuana. I know
You did not. No. The lady came up and asked for a federal grant to teach a survey in the Derry schools, and she specifically said, we have failed to teach students that marijuana and heroin are the same.
Oh, all right. Well, I like I said, I might have been sleeping, but I don't believe that we agreed to that, did we?
Yes.
Oh, well, I stand corrected then. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right, one more question, and then we'll go to closing statements.
I can't time myself.
Yep.
Thank you all for being here. You're making it a very difficult decision on who to vote for here. I've been following some legislation recently on learning. When I have questions, I message Erica and say, what does inexpedient to legislate mean? What does retention mean? I would, outside of Erica's knowledge and what her role is, I want to know how will you follow what's going on in the state? Because, we always hear like the money.
Careful.
One of the bills that I wanted to testify for was, thank you, reimbursement. There's a parity, not sure how to describe it. One of the bills was that they want to make telemedicine not equal with face-to-face, insurance reimbursement. So when you go for a doctor's appointment, they want to make it so that 180 days after the pandemic, that all people will hopefully return to in-person appointments. They don't want telemedicine to be equally paid for. They think it's a less than service. And one of those things is it's not just private insurance, it's Medicaid. So this whole time that telemedicine has been an option, when my son was quarantined for a couple weeks, they used telemedicine. In order for them to get reimbursement, telemedicine has to be equal to in-person. Sorry, I'm kind of fumbling a little bit here. I think it's going to be held at another time. This is just an example. Another example is the schools being responsible for 2.5 times the allotted amount per student getting reimbursement as opposed to 3.5. So I know I'm not being very clear, but what I'm saying is that there's a lot of legislation that should be followed that could get more money back in Derry if followed and voted on and called upon to pay attention to. Does that make sense?
And Jonathan, it starts with you.
All right. So quite a bit there.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's great. So I will be honest, I was not familiar with either of these bills that you have spoken to. Do you want us to speak to the bills or how we're going to be educated?
I would like to know how you'll stay educated and involved in bills and how that can bring money back to Derry.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, for me, as far as being educated, I think it's continuing to leverage the network that I've created within the last few weeks and within the last few years of being on the Fiscal Advisory Committee and reaching out to the town councilors, reaching out to the state legislators, reaching out to the Pinkerton Board of Trustees, setting up time with the current school board members, and continuing to collaborate and discuss the most important ways in which, yes, Michael, we can improve the education and make sure that the curriculum is going to really improve the children's education that we get. So it's just continuing to leverage that network. Also, it's being open and available. So it's funny you talk about virtual visits. I've been hosting every week now, every Wednesday, a virtual meet and greet. And so I see the the efficiency of that. I sold WebEx as a web conferencing software. I understand how we can be more efficient with doing that. And that's just going to give me more opportunities to hear from you or to hear from any of the other constituents that we have here in Derry. Again, we are a representative body. I certainly have my thoughts and opinions, but I represent all of Derry. I represent the parents with teachers, the parents that are teachers, the parents that have the students in here, the families that don't have children in here anymore in our system, or the elderly people that are living, like Colleen said, on a fixed income. We are here to represent all of that. I want to make sure that we are providing the best overall education for the biggest bang for the buck. That's what I want. And yeah, I want more revenues to get generated, to come back to us, to help lessen the burden. So again, it's continuing to leverage the network that I've created here over the last 3-4 years, more specifically the last 3-4 weeks, and just finding out from you guys, what is important to you? How can we make sure that we are advocating for all of those that need it? And so you can find me on Facebook. You can find me. I know it's funny. You can find me on my website. I'm open to all questions, and I'll try and be as transparent as possible, and I'll share what I've learned in our board meetings. And I think one thing that with those virtual meet and greets is I think that's something I'll probably end up doing beyond this. Is maybe it's not going to be weekly. It's probably going to be once a month, and so maybe that is an opportunity for people to join in and just, you know what, bounce ideas off of me, or tell me what's important, or ask me questions, and I'll do the very best to advocate for every single one of you.
It's so at the start of this process, there was a few bills going around in the beginning of the process. The HB 20 was one of them, and one of the things I was trying to do is at work I would have my phone next to me and I'd have the committee going, trying to listen to the committee, trying to work, trying to get the relevant information just so I could be on top of what's going on in current events. Being on Facebook, seeing Erica's posts on Facebook, kind of trying to ask her questions, and just get a general knowledge of what's out there so I can do the research. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to know the answers. I won't have all the answers. None of us will. But I commit to working hard to find those answers and being transparent and working with the residents of Derry to get them the answers they want and where I stand on the particular issue. I won't dodge questions. I'll be frank and give you my honest opinion on that. So I think, and I think important is, Jonathan mentioned, you developing your group of contacts and working with the local state reps more closely to understand where they stand on the issues and get their feedback and opinions on what they're seeing and what they think might happen, and really get an understanding of that. It's really just staying involved on a daily, weekly basis. Just kind of, it doesn't have to be 3-4 hours a day, but just kind of poke your head around and kind of understand where things are and just have a knowledge base of what's going on so you can be educated when questions like this come up. Just to answer your other question regarding telemedicine, I had a great telemedicine experience. I have celiac, so I wanted to have a quick conversation with my doctor and say, hey, can I get a COVID shot? It's going to affect me. And I didn't need to go spend 20 minutes in the office, or I could just pick up the phone and talk to 10 minutes, like, yeah, you good, do this, do that, and you should be good. So I think from that perspective, just to answer your other question, I think telemedicine is an important option, and it should be for moving forward. Thank you.
Hi. So when it comes to things like this, I definitely use my trusty cell phone to do lots of research. I'm on it like all night, checking out things like that. I do have some state representative friends, one right in my neighborhood. So they're definitely my go-to sometimes when I have questions. But other than that, I like to stay up to date by just doing my homework on everything and writing notes, because I will forget if I don't write it down. So I'm not familiar with those two either, but when something comes up in conversation or something like that, then I definitely dive right in and do the homework on that. And I never really dreamed of being in politics. I do much better with little children and puppy dogs. But more and more, I'm realizing how passionate I am, and so I've been just doing more and more homework, and I said to myself the other day, I said, am I going to be involved all the way in Derry politics? Because I am now more interested in the bigger picture when it comes to Derry Town councilors and the master plan. you know, so whenever I heard the master plan, I always get a little nervous, but that's when you're not privy to the knowledge, you know, so I do find myself being more involved in getting educated on everything and getting more involved.
So I've got to say your comment on telemedicine is actually very telling. If we can go back to just before COVID, because I think there's a lot of solutions in this. Telemedicine is incredibly close to my heart. I happen to be allergic to most family members at bees and wasps. I have a bad allergy to them. Being able to get prescriptions if I need them on telemedicine when I know what I need to ask for, and we have another horrible curse in Derry, which I hope nobody else has seen, ticks and Lyme disease. I've had it. I literally have the Infectious Disease Society Guideline of America tick guidelines on my desk. I got another tick, a few other words, telemedicine, I get a prescription. This is an innovation. People used to have physicians that came to you, then it was mom and pops, you went to go see your physician, you had to wait in line, the federal government got involved, it got to be really big, there were billing specialists. Long story short, telemedicine got to be hard. There were a lot of barriers put in place. There were some private insurance companies that realized, oh, you know what, we can save money. We can have one physician who can see people in 5 different states in an hour. He can spend 20 minutes with Mrs. Jones who needs it. He talks with Mr. Lane, he just needs doxycycline. Guy can look at his records. 2 minutes later, I'm off the phone. CMS is actually putting forward guidelines now because they learned from private insurance companies telemedicine works. I work for a small biotech now because I like going after rare tumors. People with blood cancers, hematologic malignancies are at particular risk of getting infections. And with the whole COVID thing starting, telemedicine was critical. There was private companies that threw a ton of money at this. There are bills now, the federal government reimbursement. If you want telemedicine, you're going to be able to keep it on the backside of this. Physicians, nurses, pharmacists have spoken up loud and clear. I think relative to the school board, having innovative solutions like this is the way to go, especially when it comes to teaching our most precious resources.
All right, so we're going to probably run a couple minutes over so you guys can do some closing statements. David, I'm going to start with you for your closing statement.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody again for their time in helping facilitate and participating in this event. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to present my case for the school board to the residents of Derry. I'm a candidate who will do my best to represent all residents in Derry. For those who have struggled through remote learning or have children with special needs, I am the candidate for you. My wife and I have shared those struggles with remote learning and are involved in special needs programs in Derry and truly understand how beneficial and necessary they are. If you're an older resident and have kids that already graduated from the school district, I am the candidate for you. I will work hard to ensure your tax dollars are spent wisely and not wasted. I appreciate the high tax burdens we face as Derry residents. As a board member, I'll do my best to hold the school administration to a high standard and ensure we continue to provide top-notch education for the top-notch taxes we pay. My commitment to you, the Derry taxpayer, is as followed. Number one, I will always be transparent and available to all residents. I have published my dedicated email and personal cell phone number on my website and my Facebook page. I encourage anyone interested to reach out. Number two, I will not always have all the answers, but I will commit to working hard and becoming educated on the issues and will always follow back up with somebody on where I stand on an issue. Number three, throughout my professional career, I've been entrusted to safeguard the assets of my organizations. I have been able to do that with great success. I would continue this as a member of the Derry school board. And finally, I commit to working with all members of the board and administration despite any differences in opinions we may have. I would call on all candidates to agree to this point. It's important, despite any political or philosophical differences we may have, that we work together to make the Derry school system first in class. And thank you again. I humbly ask for your support on March 9th. And in the meantime, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
I'm up next. I didn't exactly prepare a speech, but I will tell you, like I said, I do have a hard time sometimes with speaking, with, my anxieties, but I do push through and I fight for the families of Derry, the children, and I'd like to see more emphasis on the actual education of the children, improving that. Making it, our schools aren't rated that great in the state, and I think they could do better. I think we do need more emphasis on special education. It's growing, the growing need for it, and I'm having a hard time. I'm a little nervous. But I won't stop fighting for what's right. And like I said, I'm a big fan of the neighborhood schools. I'd love to see them stay if we could. And, they're not that old. So if we could attract families to Derry, have them stay in Derry, then you might be able to afford keeping the schools. We have a Pinkerton building that's from 1904, 1918, something like that. And you're able to do the renovations to keep that school going. So it would be nice if we could fight to keep the schools open. But if there's no other way, then we would have to look at that. I'm flexible, and like I said, I'm a lifelong learner. I like to do my research and get input from others and figure out other ways and be creative. I'm creative. I'm a preschool teacher, so I think that's it. I did have a hook line, but...
All right, so a big thank you, Tina, for putting this together. I think everybody's still got probably crazier schedules now with COVID going on, but thank you for putting this together and everyone for coming out. There's two great resources that everyone should be aware of. I will be brief on this and then wrap up. The New Hampshire School Boards Association has role of a school board member on there. It's worth reading. What does a school board actually do? What is their job? It's interesting if you read what the role of a school board member is. A lot of the focus is on academics, and we spent very little time tonight talking about academics. The other resource, the New Hampshire RSAs, if you go there, my wife I'm sure can point you there, or Google New Hampshire RSAs, it's dense reading. You read half a page, at least I'm ready to go to sleep. But it's the rules, regulations, etc. Laid out crystal clear there. So two resources that everyone should be aware of. What happens if Michael Anna gets elected? I'm going to put academia first. Academia should be a means to why we're spending money, not spending money, and then we'll get to academia. We need to ask why we have the schools. Is it to educate our students? Is it to turn children, to help educate children as they mature into young adults, that they're capable when they leave the school, that we have more Alan Shepherds leaving here, that we have more Robert Frosts? There's some amazing local artists as well that have graduated from here. What are we doing to maximize open eyes of our students when they're leaving? This is what it's all about. We can get to the money part. I don't think there's anyone that lives in Derry that is shy to fund education if they understand what it's for. When it's the only solution, when it's every solution every year, I am certainly there with concern. So if elected, I will put academia first in my role. Absolutely, I'm somebody who believes in teamwork. If you want to look at any of my performance evaluations, go back to high school. I've always been a team player. It's something I believe strongly in. And in fact, school boards are mandated to speak as a single voice. With that, last idea, this was an idea given to me at the deliberative session by a nurse. Looking into it, I think it's a wonderful idea. I spoke of wanting to look under the hood of Derry schools. There's a role called an actuary who helps you make decisions in a very unbiased way of saying, if you do X, here's all the expenses you're going to get, here's all the benefits, here's all the harms you're going to get. Conversely, if you don't do that, here's all the things that could happen. And rather than just one variable, they can look at several variables that multiple school board members will have. I think being able to engage one would be very informative for the school district to understand how to make the best decisions moving forward. Thank you.
All right, again, thank you to everyone who made this a successful event. I want to take the time to thank Michael and Colleen and David. I think, like Tina said at the beginning, we're putting ourselves out there, and I certainly appreciate you guys coming out and continuing to be advocates and continuing to be involved in our community. I think all of us up here probably have a new understanding of this for our town councilors and current school board members, and so I think it's important that these guys are all congratulated. We've all done a lot for this community already just by running. So with that, I know there's only 2 weeks between now and Election Day, but I'm hoping my answers tonight have shown to you that I'm invested in this town, and more specifically providing the best possible education for all students while keeping the budget in line. I think there are a lot of different ways in which we can do this. We need to create a long-term plan that allows us to do that, and that's what I'm willing to do. I hope you recognize that not only am I homegrown, but I've been and will continue to be involved in this community. I will fight for our kids to get the best education possible, working collaboratively with the other board members and SAU administration. I will work to get our local and state reps to generate more revenues that come back to the town. And I will work with the teachers to provide them the tools that they need to do their job really well. I hope many of you have recognized my passion and dedication to this town, so hopefully you'll vote for me. If you still have questions, there are a few ways in which you can reach out. I host virtual meet and greets that I've mentioned every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Additionally, you can reach out to me through my website, DUGANforDerry.com, it's 1G, or you can always find me on Facebook as well. I look forward to connecting with as many of you as possible. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, I want to thank all the candidates for, once again, stepping up, putting your thoughts out there, putting yourselves out there. It is definitely not easy. For voters, starting tomorrow at noontime in the town clerk's office, you'll be able to get absentee ballots. If you've already requested your absentee ballot, it will be going out tomorrow morning because the ballots have arrived. And if you are voting on Election Day, I look forward to seeing you at West Running Brook. It will be our only polling location from 7 a.m. till 8 p.m.